start that recording now. And want to welcome you all to a potluck gathering, a cornucopia of applicable agricultural environmental studies, and supported by all of these fine groups, Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, through the Wise Learn grants, and also through Victoria Rydberg Nania, who is the environmental education consultant with DPI, Field Adventures, Leap Elementary, who wrote and received this wonderful grant to support this project, Wisconsin Farm Bureau Foundation, and the Wisconsin Agriculture in the Classroom program. I'm Sandy, and if you run into any trouble, I will tell you that the best bet is to give me a call or text me during this session. My number is 920-944-4033. And here we go. So today I would like to introduce our featured speaker, Kim Corney. Kim is the teacher of agriculture at Sages, which is a charter school in Fox Lake, Wisconsin. It's part of the Waupun Area School District. And I have previewed some of the ideas that Kim is going to share with you today. She has some really great background, and if she has some time, I'd like to fill you in on what she had done before coming to Sages. I welcome her to do that as well. So if you would please, let's give a round of applause and welcome to Kim Corney. Kim, would you like me to go ahead and share your slide deck?
Yes, please.
Okay. So now,
and as you do that, I do want to do a shout out. One of my co-teachers, Jeff, is also on the phone. He's teacher of Sages also, and he does a lot of environmental work with our students and at our school forest. So I'll fold him in once in a while here with more of the environmental slides that I have.
All right. So this is where everyone gets a chance to glimpse the really crazy desktop that I keep here. And let's see. Oh, I know how I do this. Hang on. Thank you for your patience. Things just, we have to be really flexible in these virtual settings, don't we?
I can give a little bit of my background as you're pulling that up.
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yep. So honestly, I have been teaching for about 15 months. I kind of had a little midlife crisis and switched career 15 months ago. Prior to that, I actually worked in different positions within agriculture and dairy industry in Wisconsin. Obviously, I grew up on a farm, dairy and crop farm in Monroe, about an hour south of Madison. And then my first position out of college, I was an instructor for UW Extension, Sheboygan County, with a focus on dairy and livestock. And then I worked for the Morgan & Myers. They're actually a public relations brands building company on what now is Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin. At the time, it was the Wisconsin Milk Marketing Board, the state checkoff organization. I worked on that account for a few years. And then I worked for the Professional Dairy Producers of Wisconsin, where I was the program manager. I helped develop all the adult education offerings they provided throughout, started Wisconsin, and then we went national and also helped get their education foundation up and rolling. Then I worked as executive director of the Wisconsin Veterinary Medical Association for 13 years. And while I was there, I also helped get their foundation going, and I was a registered lobbyist on their behalf. And then I spent just a little over 2 years with the Wisconsin Farm Bureau Federation as the chief administrative officer, all while living in Fond du Lac County and commuting for 17 years to Madison. And then my youngest graduated from high school, and I'm like, I'm done driving. So I decided this position came open, and I pursued a license based on experience. I have a master's in science and a master's in business, and I've been here about 15 months. So kind of came in the non-traditional route, more through the industry lens into the education side of things, but I have had a really, really good time so far.
And Kim, we are working on technical difficulties in the background. We will have your presentation up soon.
Okay.
Okay, Kim, Sandy sent it over to me, but I don't have access to it. So Sandy couldn't open it and I couldn't open it. So I don't know if you can jump into your Chromebook and give us access to open that PowerPoint. We tested this beforehand, and what happened was when Kim shared her screen, we lost her sound. So we had to one of us has to share the screen and the other person can have the sound. So Kim, I'll put my email in the chat and then you can give me access to that. Or just click on the link that I just sent you.
So that's just a little fun tidbit that as you are making your fall harvest soup from the recipe I sent you, or if you've got all of these leftovers, if you're preparing meals for any upcoming events in the next couple of months, some fun ways to repurpose food scraps. So with that, I will turn it back to someone far more knowledgeable than I. So Kim.
All right, I think we're up and running. So I was challenged with the opportunity to share some pictures and have conversation around project-based learning and some of the activities that we have tried and tweaked and retried and work with our students on here at Sages. I teach agriculture for K through 6, so 7 different grades. So I don't have a lot of words in my PowerPoint. It's mainly pictures so we can have discussions and just, I think pictures tell more than I could ever tell in words. So you can hit the next one. Okay. I'm going to start with just acknowledging resources. Almost everything I'm sharing, either the initial idea came from National Ag in the Classroom, or I also have the American Farm Bureau Foundation page on the next slide. Those were all resources I use. What I like on the next slide. Oh, okay, so I know Beth went over some of this last time, but the National Ag in the Classroom website, naitc.com, has beautiful features and it keeps growing. So if you go to the matrix and you type in a search word, not only can you just type in a keyword of almost anything, but you also can, the upper left corner, you'll see where it says search results. It allows you to search under all of those categories. So if you're a classroom teacher and are trying to focus on, language, you can take your search and narrow it and they'll give you ideas to incorporate language. The other thing they added this summer was the vocabulary matrix. So you can also pull up under the vocabulary, there's a live link on the actual website, and it'll ask you, you see the bottom left corner, what age students you teach. Okay, you can click it, and then it will pull up and export an Excel document for you of key vocabulary with the word and their definition. And I just took a quick snip of one of the lists I pulled up is what you're seeing in the lower right corner. That was added this summer, and that's a beautiful feature. So if you've not checked it out or used all those cool little bells and whistles, I highly recommend it. It has been a lifesaver for me and has given me some foundational ideas to continue to grow with. The next one is the American Farm Bureau Foundation website, the next slide. And on there, they have a list of called Ag Accurate Book List. And those are books on agriculture that have like been verified that they're accurate. And I have also shared this with the individual in our school district that does the ordering for our libraries, to also try to incorporate them into our libraries, not just into my classroom or other classrooms. So we get that information out there. They also have their own like printing press where you can order books right on site here, and ag mags. I have quite a few of their books that I use and incorporate into lessons. So I wanted to acknowledge those resources before we jump in. You can go to the next slide. Okay, and just the other ways that I have sought out ideas. I do a lot of reading, a lot of researching. I have found, as probably most of you, creating your network and just having a lot of conversations, trial and error. I found there's a lot of agriculture lessons out there, maybe for middle, especially for high school. And I found that a lot of those I can just take and adapt down to my level of students. Early on, I dismissed those, and now I'm finding they're pretty golden. There's opportunities to bring that down. And then ag in the classroom workshops, Beth has talked quite a bit about that. I try to leverage all of those that they offer. Most of them are free or nominal cost, and they come with a lot of resources. I've done both virtual and in-person trainings, as has our staff here at Sages, the entire staff team. So I just want to do a shout out to those. All right, before we jump into student education, I just want to mention that staff education in our school is also a critical key point. This last August, prior to school starting, actually Jeff, who's on the call with us, him and another teacher took us to our school forest and did staff education for about half a day out there. And it was amazing. The goal was to get more of our classrooms teachers incorporating in the project-based learning. We take the students out to the school woods a minimum of once a month, and trying to teach and encourage others to be more comfortable out there and what type of hands-on project-based activities they could do out there, and some projects they could have in their back pocket if they run out of time. So those are pictures of Jeff instructing our team. Next slide. Okay, and then we actually were just able to incorporate 5th and 6th grade FFA into Sages. If you didn't know, the state of Wisconsin nationally a year ago, and the state of Wisconsin in June approved for 5th and 6th grade students in agriculture education to be able to become FFA members. So our school board just approved this, and our students are super excited to extend their classroom learning. Okay, next slide. Okay. So we're working on cranberries right now with my first graders. I like to use a lot of STEM-based projects with the cranberry lessons. Why do cranberries float? We dissect cranberries. They have the 4 air chambers, okay, that makes them float. And then are they hard or are they soft? And that will detect whether they're fresh or not, and that will detect whether they float or not. And we tie that around to how they're harvested, how they're grown. And then we make a really cool STEM challenge out of them building a raft out of cranberries, a given number of cranberries and toothpicks, and they try to float my little cow in that bowl that you see there. And before they actually put it together, they have to draw it out on paper and think through as a team of two the pros and cons of their design. And they've also learned the hard way that the more you poke the cranberry, the less opportunity it's going to have to float. That the more holes it gets, the air chambers become pretty destroyed, and it will no longer float. So they learn a lot of those lessons, and I'm able to teach about the cranberry and the cranberry industry through a lot of those hands-on, fun, interactive activities that keep them engaged. We're finishing up this unit tomorrow, actually, and we're going to do little cranberry food cups with the different layers used to grow different layers of soil it takes to grow cranberries. So we use pudding and crushed crackers and vanilla wafers, and they're super excited about that. So we always try to end a lot of units with food. They look forward to that, and they also gives them, our students, a taste of food maybe they don't normally get at home or have never had the opportunity to experience. Okay, next slide. This is my fourth grade. We did a big unit on food waste and food, I should say, insecurity. And we also like to put lessons around challenges we have in our school and have them solve problems. So we challenged 3 different teams in my fourth grade class to solve some of the waste issues in our cafeteria. And we broke into teams like, okay, how do you handle the waste where somebody takes, let's say, a muffin that's not open, but you can't return it? How do we handle wasted fruits and vegetables? How do we handle just waste that's going to be wasted? You know, is there anything we can do with the milk cartons? And find another, repurpose the milk cartons. And they all come up with work as a team and come up with a presentation. They have to research supplies it's going to take. And then I actually have our principal come in and they give a pitch to our principal, because the goal is for them to then champion and try to implement 1 or 2 ideas that they've come up with within our cafeteria. We start small and then they try to go big. But the bottom line, the message they learn about is 30 to 40% of our food in the US is wasted every year. So what can each of them individually do to help reduce the waste? And is there opportunity to help those that are food insecure as they do that? So that's kind of a project, and they're trying to pitch to us what they think the solution should be and to put action behind it. Next slide. And then with that, we took a trip to the food pantry and tied that in even tighter. The food insecurity, the community service tied with it. So we were able to make some donations. We have some chickens, so we donated some eggs, and we arranged ahead of time for them to allow the students to sort and weigh, so they could work with numbers and sort out their, fruits and vegetables, from their grains when they got there. So they had that nutrition piece of sorting into the categories. They had the number piece of weighing, and they had that really good feeling of helping the community and kind of putting that exclamation point on that food insecurity part, along with the message. Next slide. Okay, we dissected cow eyeballs. Actually, I went into the fourth grade science class, and I helped that teacher with this project. We secured the eyeballs from a local butcher shop. We got them fresh. We didn't freeze them. A tip, I would not recommend freezing them. They're better fresh for dissection, and it's easier to dissect and see the different parts. They were learning about the eye and the lens in science. So we used a bovine eyeball to dissect because they had a lot of parallels. So we're also working to try to get continue to infuse project-based learning around agriculture into the traditional science classes in our classrooms, and using agriculture or the environment as examples. So fourth grade was dissecting eyeballs earlier this year. These are my kinders. We do a big unit on sunflowers. I forgot to take pictures when we were dissecting the sunflowers and the sunflower heads. And feeling, if you dissect the stalk of a sunflower, it's really spongy on the inside. And the kids love to feel that. And they, every single time they're like, that feels like a sponge. And okay, the sponge will absorb water and help the plant grow. And they're able to make those connections through that hands-on of just feeling that inside of that sunflower. And then they are able to see how there's hundreds of little flowers on the sunflower head, not just one. And we talk about pollination and the colors and why the colors are important to track the pollinators. And we have a lot of fun around that. There's pollination activities you can do. And then the last day, we teach them how to crack and eat sunflower seeds, which is so fun to show them the video and all them trying to crack them for the first time. I think I probably get a bigger kick out of it than they do. But here's the finale of our sunflower unit, them learning how to crack sunflower seeds. So on to the next one. This one, this is 5th grade. We started a tree unit. So the very first day we went outside and we did notices and wonderings. And we all did the same tree on the playground. And they stood there silent for 5 minutes. They have a clipboard with a sheet. And there was 3 different positions: standing, what do I notice, what do I wonder. Then I made them lay on their backs and look up into the tree. What do I notice? What do I wonder? Because it's a totally different perspective looking at it from that angle. And then they closed their eyes. It was a fairly windy day. So you could hear the tree and the leaves. So with your eyes closed, what do you hear with this tree? And the notice and wonders. And they kind of journaled that. And then when we returned back to the classroom, they shared out. And back and forth. And then I was also able to put some of those wonderings kind of back in the back of my head for as I continue to teach that lesson, to make sure I cover and clarify some of their wonderings or the areas they want to know about. So that's super easy. You can do that anywhere you have a tree. Okay, next slide. Okay, potatoes. The Wisconsin potato growers, it's about December, January, they offer up potato kits for teachers free. Well, they'll send you the whole educational kit and potatoes and the lesson plan and how to work through the different processes of the potatoes. So you dry the potato, and this is first grade last year. I found that a big clear tub in the upper left corner works really well because they can also see through the tub and see the roots grow. Versus like a pail is solid. A pail's work, but it's solid, and they tend to get excited to see if someone were close to the edge, the roots grow down. And then every class period I had a data sheet where they had to take some data points and some measurings as we watched the potato plants grow. And then at the end, again, food tied to this, at the end of the potato unit and learning about Wisconsin's potato industry, we made homemade potato chips out of the potatoes. So that's them. They're getting ready to eat their homemade potato chips. Next slide. We have some hydroponic systems. This is first grade last year, again, working on finer motor skills, using their little tweezers to put seeds into the rock wool that's used in the hydroponics. So I also try to incorporate in some of their motor skills or other areas if I can, as we do agriculture. So this was fun to watch them try to pick up a little tiny seed with their little tweezers and get it in the hole in the rock wool. And then we ended up growing lettuce and spinach that they again were able to sample and eat at the end. Okay, next slide. This is Mr. McKean's. So Mr. McKean, I'm gonna let you want to take this one? Or are you on mute?
Sure, I can talk about that. Everybody. Oh yeah, we 5th grade adopted the raspberry patch at Sages, and a couple of years ago I have a little bit of that in my family, and so I invited my aunt and uncle out to talk about their raspberry farm. That's kind of how it started, and then we learned a lot about it. So this is about maybe the 3rd year of being more focused on the raspberries, just as a a crop that we have adopted. And so this year we tried something different with a couple of different number of levels. Number one, the raspberries are summer bearing, so the kids I made a sign up because they had to be picked in the summer, obviously. So I wanted to make it available to kids to pick the fifth graders going into sixth grade. And so a few signed up, and we had adults to, our principal and Mrs. Picorni and her daughter, as well as, I came a day or two. But I guess what came of that is we like to, what to say about all this. I guess the pictures you're looking at is kind of a fruition of it all. My wife is there. We're making raspberry jam with the fifth and sixth graders. So I kind of made I guess a fill in the blank recipe that they could basically have the rest if they listened well enough and followed along. They have the recipe for themselves when they're done. So it's a good opportunity to introduce a lot of vocabulary about preserving, and we use the water bath method. So it really was a good opportunity with just food safety issues, and it all worked. I mean, every jar popped, so we had them all saved really well. The kids, another teacher had donated little half pint jars to us, and so each kid in the fifth and sixth grade got to take their own jam home with them, and so that was really fun. We also had them; they were excited to give out samples at our open house of their jam. So that was yeah. So there was a lot to that, but it was very satisfying, and they really enjoyed it. So
Thank you.
you're welcome.
All right, next slide. All right, this one is something new we're trying this year. We're talking about public health, and we're doing it right now with third grade as we're going into flu and cold season. I paired them up into teams of 2 with just little petri dishes with the agar in the bottom, a cotton swab like Q-tip. They went in teams of 2. They identified 2 surfaces they wanted to test in the school. Anything was fair game. They went out, they tested it, they put it on their plates. I had this really old heater that I put them in just to try to speed up the process a little bit. But they saw and was able to see different types of germs / bacteria grow. The most alarming was the very dirtiest surfaces in our school were the hands of our second graders when they came out of the bathroom after they told me they washed their hands. That is what grew the fastest of anything in our entire school. Grew faster than the toilet seats, the railings, the lockers, keyboards on their Chromebooks. It was their hands after they were so-called washed. So that allowed us to really have a great conversation in class about proper washing. And we're also with this whole germ public health unit talking about infectious diseases, talking about food safety and salmonella and different things like that. So it's a new unit. I couldn't find a lot out there for elementary, so I'm kind of feeling my way as I go, but it has been a lot of fun. And I also have data sheets. And I wrote for a grant to get a microscope that adjusts or hooks to my ViewSonic. And the next step will be looking at the bacteria under the microscope as a class. Didn't have funds for microscopes for everybody. So I got one that could, through the Ag in the Classroom grant, that could plug into my ViewSonic so everybody could still see it. And that worked really well. All right, next slide. This one, we just got done with pumpkins. This is second grade. What I did with pumpkins is I did a lot of data collection and like problem solving, critical thinking. If you notice the upper left corner, I wanted them to measure around the pumpkin and give me inches, but I only gave them wood rulers. I had a yarn of string just randomly setting out in my classroom. And I'm like, okay, how are you going to measure a round pumpkin with a wood ruler? And we talked through different things, and it was really funny to hear their answers. And then all of a sudden, one of them's like, oh, there's yarn. So, they learned how to adjust and be flexible based on the tools you have around you to get appropriate measurements. So they put their yarn around it, cut it, and then put the yarn up against the ruler to measure their inches. They looked at, we did a water test. Does it float or does it sink? They guessed weight and we weighed it. And then we also did, you can go to the next sheet. Slide. We also did on the left, we were working on the exploding volcano pumpkin. And then on the right, we actually did one. I've seen them done with watermelon. I've never seen them done with pumpkins, but we worked to see how many rubber bands it would take to, we talked about force, to cut the pumpkin in half, 230. 2 days of classes to get all those bands on there. But as you can see in the lower right corner, it cut it perfectly in half when you had enough bands on it. And there was a lot of discussions and lessons we talked about around that, and the students had a blast. Make sure they have safety goggles on for that one, and are back a little bit, but super fun. All right, we also learned the parts of the pumpkin through these processes, the proper names, proper terminologies. Then in 2nd and 5th grade have buddies, and they also piggybacked kind of on the unit. We worked on it together, and they did the seed. They did seed tasting and seed cooking and other activities that complemented what I was doing in the classroom. This is a STEM challenge we did with candy corn pumpkins. They had a limited number of supplies. Their goal was to be able to have something not touching the table that could hold up. They needed to be able to have something that could hold 5 pumpkins without the pumpkins touching the table. And everybody spent a lot of time trying to come up with these really creative devices, when ultimately the very easiest way to do is just put their stick down, put their 5 pumpkins on it, and they had it mastered. So we talked about overcomplicating things and overthinking things sometimes. There's a ton of different ways they could have done it, but their pumpkins wouldn't touch the table if they put their wood stick in between the pumpkin and the table. And that was a lot of fun watching their faces go, oh, we didn't think of that. So we try to add in some STEM activities with kind of a spin-off on some of these units. Next one. This one, some of you might recognize these little cards. Those are from Beth and Ag in the Classroom training when she did strawberry training. We worked in teams to draw the plant and properly label the parts as a kickoff to our plant and flower unit. You can go to the next slide. And then as we proceeded through that unit, we got to the point where we then dissected the flowers. We've tried different flowers over the years. The carnation works amazing to cross-section, dissection it. Very best flower to use. You can see absolutely every part of the flower perfectly, just like the diagrams you see. And then I found this sheet, and they took the part and they put it in each of the areas. So they dissected it. They figured out which were the male, which were the female parts, and then also had to put it in its right category on the pages they have in front of it. They worked in teams of 2. It worked really, really well. I just got the carnations from our local florist. Soil sampling. This is actually in Mr. McKean's classroom. His class and Mr. McKean picked up some soil samples from the School of Forest and surrounding fields and water areas. And I went into his classroom, and we learned how to test the soils for pH and P and K. That little garden soil testing kit you can get relatively cheap on Amazon, and it has everything you need it in there, and it walks through it step by step. So you can pick up soil samples from anywhere. Like in a different soil unit, I had the kids go and all grab a sample from home. So we had a different variety of soils to do some testing with. And it's a lot of fun. and you're testing enough stuff where you can get quite a few kids involved in teams, and all working on a different measurement. And there's also books in there that show you what those measurements mean, for the different fruits and vegetables. So that little kit, came from Amazon. I've seen them on there. Okay, next one. This one is our grains. Kindergarten learns about grains. They read the Little Red Hen book, and they also, and eventually they get to the point where they make pizza, but we start with wheat or barley grain. We put it in our little grinder and we let them manually grind it as we teach them about the grain and the growing process. And then at the bottom right, the kindergarten teacher is super patient, and she has them all help make pizza dough. And then they actually eventually make their own little pizzas that they take home with them to cook. All right, next unit. Okay, one thing we didn't really have at our school other than chickens was animals. And I noticed a lot of our students were really scared of handling or had never handled animals. And I'm thinking, oh, before I get them with livestock, I have to have them comfortable handling the little creatures. So we invested in some bunnies from the shelter. So some rescue bunnies and rescue guinea pigs. And now we have a bearded dragon. We hatched ducks and raised ducks to that size in our library last year. But the kids were able to learn about properly handling them, hand washing, and just really get comfortable with feeding them and cleaning them and playing with them and being able to read them if they're scared or not scared. And that has really been an important part of what we've done the last year. It's kind of funny because our school now also uses them for some of our trauma students, and they have now incorporated in guinea pigs into our other elementary schools in the district because of the success on that part of it. How much more do you want me to go, Sandy? I can talk all day. I see it's 4:44 and I want to make sure I don't take all the time.
I'm muted, sorry. What are folks thinking? Would you like Kim to continue? Should we stop, and what are your questions at this point for Kim? All right, Carmen, we'll see you next time. Carmen's thanking you for the ideas.
You can share this slide deck out. It has pictures of tons of other things we've done. And if anybody has questions, you can email me and I can answer and give you ideas for what we've done around the topic.
I guess I'm kind of curious to hear from folks. Is there anything that resonated, or you're making a connection to something you're already teaching? And Kim, your school is in a residential neighborhood.
Right.
You're not working with a lot of farmland immediately outside your school doors.
No, we're not. We're right in the midst of Fox Lake. And we don't have a super big school or super big grounds. So a lot of what you see are resources we either bring in or things we can do out in our play area with the trees. There's slides further on that show kindergarten doing an ABC garden. So they work through seed catalogs and lessons, and they pick a different flower for each letter of the alphabet, and we plant it in this really small area, and they call it the ABC garden. But they start the seed, then in the spring they plant the plant, and throughout the summer we have families come take care of it and water it, and they're able to come back in the fall and see how nicely that garden looks. So we don't have a lot of area, but we make a lot of use of what we have. We're going to be expanding the gardens at our school. There's a big push nationally. Instead of all these, and the maintenance people don't like this, but instead of all these prim and proper, really fancy manicured school lawns, to put in learning gardens, pollinator gardens, little food forests on your school grounds. And what they're still kept up, but it's not like all grass. It's opportunity to learn by implementing that right into your school grounds and onto your school grounds. And we've been doing more of that, and there's more planned. In some of the national conferences I've been to, there's been a huge push with that. And I know Milwaukee's doing a push with that, Milwaukee schools right now. Miami-Dade School District, they've implemented it in 70 of their elementary schools, and phenomenal success, phenomenal results with test scores, taking learning outside for math and reading and some of that. They've had over 70% increase in some of their test scores just by teaching the math a little differently with some of the random leaves and twigs and stuff like that you get from implementing some of those outside.
We had a question from Melissa, like, how did you convince your maintenance team or maybe your district? I don't know if it's, perhaps it's a combination of the two, district and your site-based person.
This last year, I've actually had to prove to them that we could keep them up. Their biggest fear is weeds and unkept. So being able to show them that we could keep them up and we'd maintain them and they wouldn't become a big weed patch was huge. Start small and then work bigger. And that's what I hear from the other schools implementing more grasses or food forests or gardens is the upkeep part. And that's hard in the summer when if you don't have anybody with summer hours or you're leaning on volunteers solely, it doesn't always work the greatest. And I think over the years we've kind of learned what we can manage here, what I can manage here, what we can work with volunteers for, and knowing that right balance is super important. We had gardens a couple blocks away on some other property, and those are really hard to keep up. And we brought everything back to the school here, all of our gardens that need regular care and watering, and that has worked a lot better for us. So they're here, we see them, we walk past them every day. And they're easier to care for right on our property.
Can I add a thought to that garden piece? Just thinking about, this is Victoria, thinking about convincing maintenance, working with green and healthy schools across the state. One of the things we've heard from them is, in addition to everything Kim just said about having them close, having them easy to maintain, is making sure that you approach it kind of with like a garden committee rather than a single individual, because too many maintenance people have like been there long enough to see a garden champion, a single garden champion come and go. So if you can approach it with a committee or a group of people who are interested in the garden and maintaining it, then they have less fear that it will fall by the wayside.
And I will tell you, for a while we tried, prior to me, we tried doing raised garden beds and old silo bunks, dairy cattle silo bunks. And while like it was easier for the kids at their level and not as much bending down, I don't think the garden fruits and vegetables grew well in them based on what I saw. There was fear nothing would grow in the soil beneath them because there had been some remodels and driveways moved around and people were worried about the soil quality under the bunks. I kind of stuck my neck out and I'm like, I want the kids to work with the ground and the soil. I want them to learn how to regenerate the soil. Okay, we don't have great soil under there, but let's learn how to build that soil. Let's learn how to test it. Let's learn, what we need to do to manage the weeds. So we removed all of those and we went back to working with the soil. And there, I also firmly believe there's something therapeutic with working with the ground and the soil for not only the kids but as a teacher sometimes. And we had really good success going back to working the ground with our plants and some key learnings.
And yeah, and adding on to what all of the great things you're sharing, Kim, is if you can take some of the pressure off yourself, if you're the classroom teacher and you're growing plants, my approach has not necessarily been that we're going to end up with produce necessarily. My focus is on how can we use the garden plants as resources for learning. So for example, all of the structures that you were talking about, Kim, or how different plants, you know, create that next generation through seeds or rhizomes or whatever. So using those plants and even those things that we would classify as weeds have different structures, and those are all tools in the garden. You can use your garden plants to teach about plant interactions, plant to plant, and plant animal interactions.
Worms.
Exactly. And so if you can take some of if you're not confident in gardening and your success in creating some produce, that's one way I would approach it. And also working with Maple Grove Charter School, we've got members of that group that are part of this, the Wise Learn group. I thought about plants that don't need to be harvested until the students would be back in session again. So we grew things like ornamental, decorative corn. The principal likes to decorate with corn and gourds and pumpkins. So, and those don't need to be harvested until later. They need watering. Ever-bearing tomatoes, so then the volunteers could pick and eat those while they were there watering. Not a lot of things that were going to require picking, like green beans or anything. We did dried beans, we grew that. And then we also grew some broom corn, which allowed us to actually make some small whisk brooms, so incorporating that fiber use as well. So that was the approach that we took at Maple Grove.
You could even plant sweet corn at a point where you wouldn't have to harvest it till the students come back.
Right. And Victoria has added that there are Wisconsin master naturalists and master gardeners that need to do some volunteer work. So sometimes that's a great group to get for your summer help in keeping that garden going. So and Jeff said, oh, you had a master gardener that came out and for your 5th and 6th grade camp as well. Wonderful, wonderful. So I'm wondering if in the last couple of minutes here, if I could go ahead and add to some of the great resources that you shared, Kim. These are some that I stumbled upon that others might find helpful as well. And
this one's really good too. I didn't get this put in my deck.
Oh,
For
exploring
environmental stuff.
Nice. That is a great one. Victoria can plug that one, I'm sure, as well. So we've been exploring the essential question, what is ag literacy? And I think we're kind of growing that idea. Again, the National Agricultural Literacy Outcomes, Wisconsin Standards for Environmental Literacy and Sustainability. As you become familiar with those documents and the themes within, you're going to see connections between ag and the environment, but you'll also notice how there is that connection to the other content that you're required to teach. Another one that I think would be really great for you to explore is this ag classroom. Oh, that's the National Egg in the Classroom. I didn't mean to put that in there twice. There's the matrix, but there's also there are events that you can sign up for that Beth facilitates around the state. Another resource that I stumbled upon, I heard about this, kind of forgot about it, is the Edible Schoolyard Project. It also has a matrix where you can filter and find some really neat lessons where they'll show you like you can get it down to your curricular area, your grade level. What's your role? Do you want to use it in the classroom? They'll find the lesson, but also where they've got it linked to where it falls in the progression. So for example, garden as ecosystem, where maybe you're not really concerned about, we might not have wonderful mature sunflower seeds, but the birds have harvested them. What is this interdependence that's going on in our gardens? This is a really great place to research. There are the recipes, so that autumn harvest soup recipe came from this site. So I that was like, find some time, because you're going to get sucked into that, and like time will have gone by. You'll find so many cool, interesting things there also. And then this one, oops, what happened there? All right, let me get the link. Practical action. This comes out of the UK, but there's some really neat things that are going on in this website. One of them they've got some resources on sustainability, and there are some STEM challenges having to do with like the squash tomato challenge. So this kind of reminds me of some of the STEM things you were doing, Kim, where kids learn about a problem in another country. One was getting tomatoes off of a mountaintop without having to carry them and take up so much time. And the UN sustainability goals are incorporated into a lot of these projects. So ways that if you're a social studies teacher, you could approach ag literacy from that standpoint. So just a few things for you to play around with as we explore our essential questions through this whole series. What we're really growing this. What is ag cultural literacy? Why does it matter to our students? We heard a lot about that today. And why does it matter to our teachers? So here are the dates for our next sessions, as well as the topics, and how we'll end with on Wednesday, May 1st, May Day, the showcase and celebration of our learning and what we did with our students and what we'll be posting to Wise Learn. So there'll be more about that coming up. I just want to thank Kim so very much for being here to facilitate this learning with us, and all of you who have been on the call, and those who will be watching this in this recorded form. Connect with us in our social media. Join our group at connectexploreengage.org. Don't forget there's 2 E's, EE, right? Explore and engage. And with that, we'll call it a wrap and stop our recording. And once again, thank you, Kim. Thank you, everyone. And